WLRN Video presents.
Hey, this is Joey Brite. I just had the pleasure of having a sit down, in Zoom anyway, with Kellie-Jay. And for WLRN, I hope that this brings you a lot of pleasure. This is a very casual conversation. And make sure that you listen to everything else that WLRN has to offer. From YouTube to the WordPress, look at the Facebook page, and even the Twitter account. WLRN is the original TERF radio. Enjoy this wonderful conversation with Kellie-Jay of Standing for Women. There we go. It is so lovely to finally meet you after, years now of watching you. And I know that we share some things in common. We don't believe in true trans, and there's some other things, but really, welcome to the WLRN, Women's Liberation Radio News. I'm a volunteer, and I've been wanting to do an interview with you for a while now. And, I've been watching a lot of your interviews and just your spots and seeing that you have had to fill that role of being put on the spot, of being challenged, or just being invited and having to kind of defend things in a way that I thought, I would really love, after all the different stories that I've heard you tell in your own journey and trying to put pieces together. And I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to just have an honoring of you and find out who the heck you are, how you came from what I believe is in 2015, correct me if I'm wrong, with Mumsnet. But I wanted to hear your trajectory through that, through creation of Standing for Women, your association with women like Venice, your friendship, to where we are now, to where I would say, I believe that you have created one of the most iconic, and as I said to you earlier, I feel over time that taking the definition of woman, that's simply, but you've chosen a font, you chose to have white letters against a black background, you've projected this in places. I think it's equivalent, and I hate to say in a way, because I can't think of a female artist that is equivalent to the idea of an Andy Warhol and the Campbell soup can going around the world. So I honor you that way. And I would just like to ask you, please talk from what happened with your introduction. How did you become peak transed at all?
Okay, well, thanks very much for having me. Really lovely to meet you too. So in about 2015, we had a Conservative government elected, and they had been part of a coalition. And I just think nobody thought that they were going to get in. And so, much like if people are still on the left, they have no idea that there is a genuine opposition that will go and vote. And so we had no idea. And so when they were elected, everybody was bereft. And I just joined this massive group of women called Awesome Lefty Women. And when I joined them, there were about 400, and it went to about 20,000. And in this group, it was women, and it was a lot of women. Women weren't really talking about whether they were married, whether they were straight, whether they were lesbian, whether they were bisexual, what they did for a living. Sometimes they talk about that. We didn't know whether each of us were mothers. It was just purely political conversation. Nobody was talking about real personal things unless it was pertinent to politics. And then some men joined. And it was the first time I'd seen men in women's groups and spaces. And more alarming than them being included, quite frankly, was the fawning of other women. I think that's been throughout this whole last 6 years, the fawning of women, and the invitation for men to erode our rights by the women is probably the most galling thing over the last few years. But anyway, so I'm in this group, and then this guy joins, and we have a culture of northern working class comics in the United Kingdom when I was growing up that told sexist, horrible jokes, racist, sexist, just horrible men, the sort of nasty comedy. And this guy just, that's the voice I heard when he posted. And these men were posting soft focus selfies in sort of 1980s sexy secretary gear. And then loads of women would go, oh, you look so amazing. I wish I could do my makeup like you. And I'm like, there's something really weird going on here. This guy joins, he tells a really, really sexist joke about violence against women. And I just said, are you sure you actually even identify as a woman? Because I was using that language because I didn't, at that point, I don't think I hadn't heard it enough to know exactly what it meant. And he went nuts, and loads of women went nuts, and they were all like, you can't say that, you're transphobic, you're a TERF. And then I was like, okay, we're not allowed to talk about this. Well, that's literally all I'm going to talk about. And then I didn't last very long in that group. So that was my first sort of realizing what had happened. I'd heard about Mitchfest, but I genuinely thought at that time that somebody who called themselves trans was a really vulnerable, quiet, a little bit disturbed, creepy man, but not autogynephilia, not I wouldn't want to be in a room on my own kind of men. I just thought they were misfits, just disturbed, but not particularly harmful misfits. And then obviously I've had quite an education since then. So that's my peak trans.
And then how did that lead you to your next project or thing or thought process?
So then I started talking about it in a variety of groups, and Labour groups. I got kicked out and these words kept being used again and again. Then somebody messaged me who I'd known on Mumsnet. So I'd been on Mumsnet since 2006. And quite a prolific poster. And so I was, Posie Parker, it's a name that's quite easy to remember. And that's where my whole thing comes from. Just because Posie and Parker were two names on the list for my daughter, who isn't called Posie or Parker. And so that's where the name comes from. And I got together with these women. They were in a group called Fair Play for Women. And that was just a Facebook group started by a woman called Cherry Austin. It was her inception. And then Cherry started the website and started this sort of reaching out to other people. But that was the first group. And so that was, then you were beginning to realize where you couldn't talk about it, and language was being more and more snipped. And then I had, a little bit of a horrific experience with women in the movement where they just started massively defaming me and saying horrible things about me. And so I thought, well, I still want to do. Oh, I know. Then I'd been arrested. Then I'd been interviewed under caution. I'm so sorry. I don't even know my own story.
Forgot a little arrest there in the story.
So then what happened is I got a text. When was that? Must have been October. No, it was I'm going to say 2018 in January or February. I got a text from the police and I thought that must be nonsense. Like, why would the police text someone to say we want to talk to you? I just don't even believe it. And so I ignored the text and I kept getting them. And then I got a phone call and a policeman left his details. And so I phoned him back and they said, we would like you to attend an interview. It's voluntary. And he was like really jovial, friendly, happy, talked for about 14 minutes, told me it was Susie Green, and she'd complained about 6 tweets of mine on Twitter. And he was even sympathetic in this call about what my point of view might be. And we all talk about stuff around the meal table. And I think I'd mentioned Trump and said, well, we're allowed to say what we like about Trump because he's a public figure and she's a public figure. Anyway, so then I talked to this group and they said, you need a lawyer. And somebody recommended someone incredible whose name I can't remember. And so I phoned him and he was quite aghast. And we went to the interview with a prepared statement. and they tried to charge me for 6 tweets, which included things like Janet Mock is a man, that castration was child abuse, something about mermaids being like the child catchers at Pride by giving out sweets and ice creams and working with Walls ice cream. And the guy said, the guy said at one point, the hate crime officer, he said, "Oh, you say castration, sex reassignment surgery includes, you know, is castration." Well, it's not. Just so, all right, mate. So I was still doing the whole no comment, because that's in the UK, that's what you do. You do have to answer, but you can say no comment. They tried to charge me with nuisance, public nuisance, conspiracy, because there were other people talking the same as me, because, oh, I don't know, I'm talking the truth.
And this is
Malicious communications.
I'm sorry, this is online is what they're talking about. This is all.
They're talking about my tweets. They got my information. At the time, there were jihadis. You know, in the news, there had been jihadis where they couldn't get the information from Twitter to locate these people. And they got my information from Twitter. They got all my contact details and my actual name, because I was Posie Parker on Twitter. And so they tried to charge me. They sent it to the Crime Prosecution Service, which decides whether or not to proceed with charges, and they decided they wouldn't. And that was appealed by Susie Green, and it failed again. So then I went into the Times. Then I went to the House of Commons with my friend Venice, her and I we started our friendship with a little bit of a set to, which is always same with Magdalene. We sort of had a bit of a who are you kind of
like a meet and greet.
Pardon?
A meet and greet, you mean, in person?
No, I mean an argument online.
No. I mean, set two. Is that what you said? Yeah,
set two. Sorry. So we had this sort of you know, a bit of a. It's happened to me a lot, and I end up really good friends with these people. But it's a bit of a fronting, kind of sorting each other out, and then she messaged me when I got arrested, when I was invited to be interviewed, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And then I was going to go and talk at Millwall, which is a football club with a lot of violent hooliganism in its past, and they cancelled Venice's talk. So I ended up talking in the House of Commons. And so I don't know if you've ever had this, but because people were frightened on my behalf, I was expected to be somehow courageous for just attending the interview, which is, you know, I appreciate the accolades, but I mean, what else do? You just do it, don't you? It's not a particular act of bravery. And so that sort of propelled me into some sort of spotlight.
So that's where your friendship started with Venice Allen, you're saying, and you had a little with Magdalene as well online. How did these get resolved? How did they develop friendships?
I don't know. I think what happens in those kind of honest, unguarded conversations, you actually find out who people are. I mean, as long as you're not abusive, you're not name calling, although Magdalene was quite drunk when we had ours. But as long as you're not really abusive, it does kind of settle, it does push somebody. And then you find yourself having a great deal of respect. And Magdalene was somebody, every time there was, and she got attacked by similar people who attacked me before she was diagnosed. And as soon as anyone attacked me, she would always sort of give me a call and see if I was all right. And it was, you know, it's very sad that she's no longer with us. But that's really what happened with Venice. And then her and I just have become like great friends.
And this did this association cause the two of you to think about, or was there a particular thing that occurred that you said, you know, I think I want to do something like start a Standing for Women, or before Standing for Women happened, like where's that gap between, you're talking about getting to know these women. What was the next stage then? Because we're still not at the point where you've come up with this iconic dictionary thing.
Okay, I'll try and race through it. So the next thing that happened is some of the women on the left, the socialist feminists, so-called, they released a really damning, horrible bunch of lies about me. And because of that, so I was having quite a significant voice just by virtue of probably a little bit of the fact that I'm like I am, and then also being interviewed under caution. So then I was quite known. And so, and Posie Parker and the whole thing just worked as a message. And they put out this statement that basically accused me of being racist, Islamophobic. What else was it? Just horrible, just inferences and horrible things. And because of that, I then felt like I had to retreat. So I had to be behind something, but I couldn't not do anything. So then what I did is I sort of secretly started putting out, it then was, what can we do? Because people have to talk about this. How much is it to advertise in the Times? And it was like 20,000 to 40,000 pounds. I was like, well, I don't think we could do that. So then it was about creating a story, a news story. It was about putting it out there somewhere, putting what was happening out there somewhere. And I just sort of started thinking, what literally right at the center, the very epicenter of everything that's happening, what is it? And it was literally erasing the word woman. It was taking the word away from us, that kind of protected us in all sorts of ways, being able to name who we are, being able to name men. And it was just this language. And so, I mean, nothing is less confrontational than a dictionary definition.
You would think.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously it is, because it's now my definition. If you ever look on Twitter, they sort of call it Posie Parker. Every time someone says woman, adult, human, female, it's like Posie Parker's definition, which has a double thing for me. Number one, I love the fact that they constantly associate me with that. So that means that they do think of me often, but also it must really, really, really annoy women that don't like me very much.
It's like you've assigned the definition now. I don't like that.
Great.
What year is that? Are we saying 2000?
This is September. This is July 2018.
2018. Yeah, 2018 was quite a year for all of us. I know they really started ramping up. Wow.
Yeah.
So you come up with this idea, but then what takes shape? And in this, I want to ask, do you have a background in advertising, promotions? What's your background?
Well, I haven't worked for a really long time. I didn't work in sort of the creative side of advertising. I did work in like magazines, but industry, comms, media, magazines.
What did you do?
Oh, I basically put together advertising and promotion. Nothing particularly wonderful, but it was lucrative, but it wasn't particularly creative. It was,
no one's going to believe that at this point. Not with
what it wasn't creative.
Whatever you were doing. It sounds like you're minimizing it. I'm assuming, obviously, you had a successful career a while back in magazines, in promotion of things, in coming up with.
Look, basically selling advertising.
Selling. So you were sales.
I was just sales. Just sales.
Yeah. Wow.
I've got some terrible stories where I would just anyway, I was successful at doing selling.
Gotcha. So how did this get then in this form?
Well, first of all, it was going to be buses, but they're expensive. Taxis, they wouldn't have done it. So it was really it was cost. It was just looking at cost. Now, it didn't need to go anywhere wonderful. Didn't need to be digital. It just needed to be somewhere for the trans rights activists, and let's not call them trans rights activists.
Yeah.
For
men. Yeah. Yes.
For some men to decide that they hated it, that they really didn't like it, that it wasn't okay, and to start saying terrible things about it, which obviously that was the invitation.
Yeah.
So then it was like, then we knew it was going to be a paper billboard, because they're the cheapest thing. And obviously the white on such a vast space on a billboard with black lettering, that was never going to be any good. The idea of black and white plain English, that was always, you know, that's quite a basic thing. And so this particular font, like choosing the word woman that looked most sort of almost most like really basic writing, but not primary. So you couldn't really use a font like Arial or whatever. I didn't want anything with the A where the A sort of went like that. No, so those things were definite. Oh, I have got an A like that. But it's
Yeah.
you know, it's not, I don't even know what I'm saying.
It's
Anyway.
Yeah, right underneath there is what I think you're talking about, the way that you did the word. It almost looks like a horseshoe.
Yeah, so this is the phonetic.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was just about it being really basic. Had to sort of fill a space, so it couldn't be too tall, couldn't be narrow, and all of those things. I think they did come into play. You know, I probably spent about 2 days just putting different lettering on, and then we sent the copy. It went up.
But that's about you having that background, right? Having that eye for what is going to be aesthetically with the kind of punch that you were looking for. You know, if you had just come up with this and not had any background at all with that, I can't imagine it having the success that
Well, I mean, you say background. I think I love you for it, but I don't really, I can't say that the stuff I did 20 years ago or 20 years ago has got anything to do with, there's no skill set in there that lends itself to this. I think it's just it's an instinct thing. I think some people, you know, I think we all have an eye, don't we? More often we know what we don't like when we look at something, so we know what is off.
True.
And then we just have to work. So it's just about that. It's just about thinking it had to fill the space. It couldn't be, the word woman couldn't be too much bigger than the bottom. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much skill is involved in that, but it worked.
So you went from a billboard, and then what was the next physical thing that you went to?
Buses. So buses in Edinburgh, they got removed. Billboard in Leeds, digital, that got taken down. 2 billboards, digital billboards outside of Waitrose in a posh part of London, they got taken down. And then, so I got involved with a sort of a guerrilla projectionist. And so we thought Parliament was out. So then we projected the dictionary definition of the word woman onto the National Gallery, which is really near Trafalgar Square, the Royal Opera House, which is in Covent Garden, and the BBC building. The first 2 were just about aesthetics, just about taking a really nice picture to share on social media. But the BBC was clearly because the BBC have been terrible. So we wanted to send a message there, and that was really exciting. And then I also projected the dictionary definition of the word woman onto the West Yorkshire Police headquarters up in Leeds.
And why them? Why them? I know that Leeds is very woke, but...
Well, they're the ones that sent 2 police officers down from Leeds to my area to interview me. And they have done numerous really dodgy things. And it's also an area where there is like, it's called a managed zone. It's basically a safe haven for pimps. So it's the worst. It's just, I went to university there, and it was the last city on earth you'd expect to be woke. Let's put it that way. Like proper, a little bit backwards, a little bit sexist, you know, just not that place.
It's very working class, is it not?
Well, it probably isn't anymore. not so much. Not in the
Interesting.
bits that are woke.
Yes, I know someone that we both know, Isabel Staffy, has been doing such tremendous work in Leeds around all of that.
Mm.
It's horrible. So again, we're not at the point yet, I think, in this storytelling where
Sorry.
standing for women has become something. So is that next, or is there something else that goes on?
No, I've just totally missed it. So Standing for Women came about because I was originally, we were talking about a political party. So I'd already bought a website called Standing for Women, and that was going to be about a route into politics. And so when I needed to sell the t-shirts, so that was that. So then we thought the billboard. And so in order to raise money for the billboard, I sold t-shirts with a dictionary definition and stickers. And nobody knew when they were buying the t-shirts and stickers that there was going to be a billboard. Because what we couldn't afford was any of the TRAs getting wind of it and stopping it. And so it really was secret. So when people saw it, they were just, it was totally great. It really was quite amazing. I think people were just it was just such the right moment. It was the right thing. It was incredibly public. It was massive. People couldn't avoid it. All the women that had been shouting into the ether and being ignored felt that their voices were somehow stuck up there with that word. And so it really just galvanized women. And it also was a fabulous dog whistle.
So this is still 2018. Is that when?
Yeah,
this
that's when Standing for Women started.
Seems like that was an enormous year of growth. And so at this point, then you obviously had Standing for Women in mind. It seems like that whole thing from Mumsnet, and again, probably something that we have in common. When somebody says you can't do something, or you shouldn't look into something, or you're becoming obsessed with something, and you need to stop, you need to get away, that you're gonna go for it. You know that you've hit a nerve, and you know that something's going on, and you've got to go further, and you've got to go deeper. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I'm also not very good at being told what to do. And I'm not very good at walking by and watching somebody else be treated badly. I'm always gonna be. My husband constantly tells me I'm gonna get hit, not by him, by some random stranger when I I intervene all the time in situations. If I can't keep quiet, so if somebody told me about a situation at home that I felt wasn't very good, I would be the one. I would be the person. I cannot walk away from something having something I still wish to say. And so, when often people say, "Oh," I'm sure you're not in this actually, Joey, but often people say, and then I wish I'd said. I never have that. Often I might think, I wish I hadn't said, but I never think, I wish I said. Oh, if only I had said in that moment, because I will say it.
Yeah, I'm usually thinking, and then I wish I had added. So still on this journey, you're doing this thing. 2018 is, that's where here in San Francisco, where it heated up with what used to be called the lesbian and gay parade, just became the LGBT blah, 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 but it just became Pride. And we thought, great, all these straight people are going to come from the suburbs and they're going to go, let's go to the parade, because we're part of it now. We could just be proud, everybody be proud. We used to make jokes about that, but that's actually what really happened. And beyond that, and in 2018, lesbians were literally attacked by other lesbians in what we had here in San Francisco, still have, but it's not really what it is, called the Dyke March. It's the Saturday night that precedes the Sunday. That's the big celebration, used to be a celebration. Yes, and women were attacked by other women, literally in that. And yes, that's where we are. California is, I think you know from across the pond that anything that happens in California pretty much, which I think is, having grown up in Los Angeles myself, that so much of what drives anything in California is Hollywood. It's the culture of you know, the entertainment industry with music, everything else. So TV shows, everything that I know get exported to you all now. And now that we have Netflix and whatever, you have to have all those things. So between things that happen between California and New York, both of those things become extremely influential about for the Midwest and everybody else. And then of course, you know, it gets exported. So yes, the state that I'm living in, I do have the background that I have, that I was trying to sort of glean to see what your influences were, and maybe that's just the question that I need to ask you. Do you think as a little girl or a teen, even when you're saying that, when you're sort of downplaying that whatever it was that you did in advertising or sales, what were the kinds of influences that you had visually? It could have been art. I'm wondering if there are particular people or, you know, mediums, like was it film, was it paintings, was anything like that that got you in particular? I want to know a little bit more about your background in that way.
Well, I quite like being different. So when everybody else had like pop stars, I had posters of Marilyn Monroe. I was quite obsessed with her from about the age of 14. I think somebody told me, like before her surgery, I think she must have had a nose job so she had brown hair, and somebody told me I looked a bit like her, and that was quite enough for me to be a little bit obsessed with her. I did a lot of performance, so but nothing like nothing deep and meaningful. I mean, musicals. So I did some
Okay.
of that. I tell you what it is. I there's a couple of things that I think shaped who I am. One is birth. I think that often we are born with who we are, and I think looking at my 4 children, the great stuff about them, I don't think I've had anything to do with. I'm not talking about manners or anything like that, but just who they are. I think that's how they're born. I've got one of my children is very stubborn, and he started shutting his eyes and putting his hands over his ears when he didn't like something, when he was like before he could talk. And that's exactly who he is right now, a decade and a bit along. He's just that kid, right? So that's one thing. And I've got just an older sister, and my parents married and stayed together and very young. So my mother had my sister when she was 18. We grew up with not very much money, which I had no idea we didn't have very much money. I thought we had as much money as everybody else. So I think that's something. I think a childhood outdoors, creating. My sister and I would go and dig up clay in the garden. You know, not really allowed to watch TV. What else? And then when I can sing. And I can sing kind of like a Doris Day. I can sing. And so when I was little, my cousin and me shared a role at primary school. This is a very long story, but I do genuinely think it shapes who you are. And we both stood up. We got told impromptu to stand up in assembly and sing a solo together. So sing this song that we were both singing in this play. And I sang it really, really well, and she didn't. And she didn't because she was nervous, and I did because I was also a bit nervous, but I was very good. And from that day, girls just used to have a go at me. That lasted, they took that into secondary school. And I never ever thought that was anything to do with me, which as an adult, that is true. But I just had really high self-esteem, but I was also kind, and I wasn't arrogant, but I just always had this kind of, I am right. I'm, nothing's going to take me off this course, that I am right about this. I'm completely right. I'm right about this. Many of us, I'm sure, feel the same, but so I think that's what I can't remember what your question was.
No,
I went down that route, but sorry.
Well, no, not at all. I apologize. It's very interesting because it sounds like, would you say that your parents were very supportive of your agency, of yourself, and how you were?
I don't know. They were quite, look, I mean, I grew up in the 70s in a small town, and I remember thinking I was great because I never pushed in a queue. You know, I was definitely, I knew I quite like order in that way. I like fairness and justice. I don't think I'm particularly unique. I think a whole generation of kids where I grew up, that's I think we were just really lucky. 1970s, 1980s to grow up, we were lucky. I also developed breast at 10, and so boys decided that they would start pulling my bra strap and so on. So I was quite feisty. I could really, I could, like, verbally, I could certainly look after myself. But we also, I think it's really interesting for my generation of women in the United Kingdom that we both had a female prime minister and a queen. So the two most important people in our country were both women. And Margaret Thatcher, and I'm a bit of a revisionist now that I look back at her. I admire her much more than I've ever admired her. I think her achievement to be prime minister and her strength and conviction, whether I agree with what she was saying is another issue. And I'm sure some of the policies I will never agree with. But I do think that she certainly lent legitimacy to girls in the UK thinking that they could do whatever they want. A bit like Kamala Harris, right? I don't like the woman. I don't particularly like her policies. But if that gives girls in the United States just even somebody to look at, that they could become that too. And I'm sure as soon as Biden pops his clogs, she will be president. Then I think that will have a profoundly positive impact, even if she actually obliterates all women's rights.
You are listening to WLRN.
Yes, very, very much so. Again, I'm in California. I worked on 2 of her campaigns. Ask me if I don't feel kicked in the teeth. Anyway.
It's all a lie, though. It's all a lie, this stuff. It can't last because it's not true.
Moving on with this journey, I'm loving this. Yes, I really appreciate hearing that about your childhood, about that spunkiness and stuff that you had, because we come to that in different ways. But you just shared something with me that I see yet one more thing we have in common. We're the second daughters, right? Those are supposed to be the rebel children. The first child is usually wants all the approval and all that, you know. I couldn't be more opposite from my own sister, who's 6 years older than I am. Extremely feminine, extremely concerned about what men think. It doesn't matter, just whatever men, you know, I think. And even in her older years now, it's still, there's so much there that where we're different, but that she's come around now and she appreciates me much more because she doesn't want to put up with some crap that she's put up with. I was always the rebel, though. So okay, you've got standing for women, you've got that established, you have a website, you've got these other women that are coming around, you do the billboard. It's kept a real secret for a long time. 2018, by this time, I think you said it was July, women must be feeling like some sense of power is coming around with this craziness that we're seeing in the United States. We're looking to you and going, where are all these AGPs coming from? What the heck? And they're violent as hell. And then I don't remember where Maria McLaughlin got attacked. I don't remember what that time was, but how did that play out in what you were doing when she was attacked?
I can't remember whether she was attacked before. I think she might have been attacked in 2018, also in the September, but it might have. That's really bad. I can't remember. I think it was the 13th of September, but I don't remember whether it was 2017 and she was the first person to sort of have anything in the news, or whether it was 2018. I think it might have been Venice's first ever attempt at organising a talk. So I think Maria came way before me, because, yeah, I think she did. So Venice is the first person. So Julia Long organised a talk called Thinking Differently in 2016. That was very much, that would have been already rad femmes going to that meeting. I think Julie Bindel talked. I think Magdalene, Stephanie Davis-Arai, and that was great. And then Venice organised the first of these talks. She did one in London, Conway Hall. That's where Maria got attacked. I think that was the September. And then she'd done another one or two even before I met her, when we went to the House of Commons and had a meeting.
So in 2016, did you see Julia Long's, that organized event? Did you see that, attend it?
I didn't go to that, no. I mean, look, I have my youngest then, I would have just recently moved house to a brand new area. And those sort of things, it just wasn't feasible. I wouldn't have had childcare. My parents were still living in China, I think, at that point. And so I wouldn't have had there's been no way that I could have attended that, because
okay,
I can't take the kids. Well, I wouldn't anyway.
But at some point, obviously, something shifted with this idea of standing for women, the billboards, the T-shirts you've got. One of the things that, and in 2018 in London, that's where some women that summer, again, Pride Month, that's when Get the L Out, when a number of lesbians laid their bodies down in front of the entire parade. And I was wondering if that was something that was in the news for you. Did that affect you? How did you
Well, I know Julia really well, so I would consider Julia one of my very good friends. And so we did, obviously, these things, it's not just the news they create, it's the backlash. I think that is most interesting, is perhaps a rather dismissive word, but I think every time consciousness is raised around these issues, and you see how many people are very, very angry that women want to highlight what the hell is happening to them, I think it's both brilliant, because people need to know, and every time this happens to women, more women get piqued. More women realize that there's something going on, because there's someone angry that lesbians, why would lesbians want to stop the Pride parade? Those questions are raised. So yeah, it was big news. And interestingly, it was roundly condemned. Just weird.
It was something that also was stimulated because of the women that got attacked here in San Francisco. They reached out to them, and it was that's that part of 2018 that got intense. Between as 2018 was wrapping up, where can you remember, where were you sitting at that point with this organization, and what had you done at this point? Or different?
Well, by that point, I'd been on the television twice, and I'm not going to lie, they were quite successful. And so it did make the news. The billboard made the news in all sorts of countries, but really was in most large newspapers over here. And then I went on This Morning, which is like a magazine, very well-watched program. And I also did this interview with Sky News with Adrian Harrop. And that was, that was really good. And
it still provides many hours of entertainment for so many people.
I mean, I don't know that I was the first to say that trans women aren't women, but I was the first that had said it for a while, since it had been something that you couldn't say. And I think that it just became a bit of someone said it. Thank goodness someone said it. And it launched Standing for Women, it propelled Standing for Women forward. We raised lots more money through T-shirts, and it just, it then continued. Then I'm once I've done the Adrian Harrop interview, and I don't think there's been another interview maybe aside from Kira Bell,
Mhm.
that has had any real impact or real change, that's sort of a bit of a game changer. Like Kira Bell being interviewed, clearly her story is a game changer. Her court case, her bravery is totally just
Mhm.
exceptional, and
Mhm.
it's changed the landscape, and it's brought people in to this fight that had no idea what was going on. And I would argue that no, I wouldn't argue. I would say that my interview with Adrian Harrop probably had a dramatic impact at that time also.
No, absolutely. The thing about Kira Bell that's so lovely is that, and she was willing to be one of the speakers. She sent a pre-recorded clip for the Can I Get a Witness conference that happened last August. The thing that sets Kira aside, I would say, is unlike Americans, unlike an awful lot of Americans who sue, they want to sue for themselves. They may want to make a point to, help other people. But the thing that was so shocking, I think, for a lot of people was that Kira sued for the good of the greater good. Something that
Yeah.
you and I both, it appeals to that sense of social justice, of something of fairness. Kira didn't go after that about herself, and she still has that kind of integrity and that thing about her. I think we couldn't have had a better woman to take that thing on.
Mm. Although, frankly, I wish she would sue. And I understand, I don't know whether that decision is absolute, but I personally think that she needs some financial compensation for
Mm,
her suffering and
mm,
for what's happened to her.
mhm,
And look, I don't want the UK to be a litigious nightmare like the US,
mhm,
because often, some things aren't financial. And some things become cheap when you put a price on how much suffering.
mhm,
But I do wonder whether actually, because the Tavistock um, has almost got off scot-free, and then they had this appeal where they said that, well, parents can consent for their kids.
mhm,
So because of those things, I think actually um, costing them an arm and a leg, which in place of Kira's body, but costing the NHS a substantial amount of money might make them pause and really think if they want to be doing this to kids.
mhm, mhm. This leads me to 2019, and I think I'm skipping a lot of months. I don't know how your early part of 2019 was looking, but another thing that you did that really affected me and my sense of what I have relations with two desisters in Canada. They refuse to use the word detransition because, as they've said to me, I never went anywhere. They
Mm.
call themselves desisters, which I suppose I could say because I'm somebody who refused to accept free testosterone on the street when it was being handed to me by a guy in a little metrosexual, sort of suit and little Brooks Brothers thing, saying, "Here, I've got what you want. I got what you need." And they were doing free testosterone. That's another story. But the thing that you did that really that really helped to it helped to feed into my brain what I had been wanting to do starting in 2019. I started thinking about these clinics. These
Mm.
clinics need to be protested. And you went in front of where in July 2019 with those enormous images.
So that was a Stonewall conference where they were basically manipulating educators into teaching Stonewall crap in schools.
Mhm,
Um, because we don't we don't have clinics making mega bucks. I don't feel it's appropriate in the UK to go outside of those clinics, because um, often our clinics are not in a big private hospital. They're the NHS. And sometimes people are going in traumatized, like they might have reconstructive surgery or those things. So we haven't done that because it's a very different picture in the United Kingdom. Um, but we did feel, I did want to go when I heard that Stonewall were actually having a conference about how great they are. I wanted people to understand what it what it was that they were going to. And the highlight of the day, I mean, I had these massive, I think they were about 5 foot tall boards with images and slogans. And this one guy was shouting abuse at us. He was running and he was so close to running into a tree. It was an absolute perfect. It was like, it's like running like this, calling us all names. And then he just stopped just short of running into a tree, which clearly would have been the best thing that would ever happen to me ever in my life.
So I wanted to know if you got any pushback specifically. I was bringing up these women that I know that are desisters in Canada, because beginning to do the protests as Can I Get a Witness is doing now across the country, I got some pushback on Twitter, although I personally didn't because I don't exist on Twitter. But the idea of having real images of a double mastectomy was something that came up. And as I said, my people in Canada said, Joey, if you're going to continue doing these, please show the world these images. The United States has got to wake up. And they both had told me, one had been on testosterone and had done this faking for 9 years, the other one for 10. They're both in their late 30s now. And they don't really relate to many of the detransitioners that we see on YouTubes and stuff. But they both said to me, if I had seen anybody in Canada protesting with an image like that, I never would have had my breasts cut off.
Why?
So there's that, I don't think that there's necessarily a right or a wrong about it. I had heard that you got some pushback for having a huge phalloplasty image and the double mastectomy. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, it's the usual lot of women that criticize me, and they sort of said, oh, it's like anti-abortion, and I was like, yeah, it is. It's imagery. And we think of it's at the Vietnam War where the little girl's naked. That image stopped the war, right? We think about Tank Man when we think about Tiananmen Square. There's something an image can do that often words can't. And you can't, I don't want the people that are teaching that to ever get away from their mind's eye, what really they are teaching. That actually what they are telling teachers to tell kids to do eventually leads to the whole flesh of a forearm being cut off, the necrosis of thighs. I mean, we didn't do the fake penis. We just did the mastectomy, the nippleless chest that's rather concave. We just did those images. And the pushback, frankly, I don't even care what those people think, because I'm not like, I think even J.K. Rowling talked about we shouldn't use these words like mutilation and because of so-called detransitioners. And I'm not trying to reach detransitioners. I'm not even trying to reach women that have already done this to themselves. I'm not trying to reach them. I'm trying to teach teachers not to teach it. I'm trying to tell politicians not to endorse it. And I want parents to understand that when their little girl comes into them and says, I'm a boy, when they're 7, I want those parents to understand that if they don't put that kid right at that point, if they don't act correctly at that point, if they do affirm, then what they're really doing is taking their daughter down a path where she will have both her breasts cut off, where she will try and have a fake penis that will result in 30 corrective surgeries, where she's got numerous holes in her urethra, where she's urinating out of her anus, where she can't have an orgasm, otherwise she goes into atrophy and she's in agony and needs a hysterectomy. I don't want anyone not to be perfectly educated about what it is they are really talking about when they talk about this lovely word of born in the wrong body, transition, and all those silly euphemisms that don't mean anything.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll try and do
Okay, women
shorter,
apologize.
calm answers.
No, this is fine. This is it. This is, this is a long form interview. Now I want to get you into what you've been, obviously you had the YouTube, you started doing YouTubes. What got you to start doing that? And why have they not completely kicked you off? I'm always amazed when I tune in and she's still there. And it's like,
well, they've hidden me for quite a long time, I think, because I get a lot of engagement, like per video. I'm not saying I get more than anybody else, but if you think about my trigonometry, for example, that's now had 1 million views. That doesn't seem to have translated into views for me, despite the fact that I do get a lot of people that comment that they've not been notified, or so I do wonder if I've had some sort of weird shadow banning that just puts me somewhere. Just for the fact that I do get sort of thousands of views on each video, and yet my subscribers don't seem to change at all for like a year. So I do wonder about that. I don't know why I haven't been kicked off. I have no idea why I've not been kicked off. So the YouTube started because I did a Facebook Live video. Did I do YouTube first? I'm not really sure, but I did this Facebook Live video where I went to this weird feminist meeting, and it was called Some Hatpin Feminist History, and you sort of sat in a room and all around were posters about Black women's rights, suffragettes, just different feminist fights, the right to earn, and I'm not even going to call it what it's actually called, but the right for women to earn the same as men. All different little gains that we've had in this country. So 1974, you could actually own something after divorce. And so we're in this room, and these women read this rule thing out, and anyway, it was quite funny. And it was like really woke. And so I did a live video about it, and I ranted quite a little bit, and it got, I think in about 2 hours, it got 60,000 views, and then Facebook just deleted it. But somebody had already saved it for me because we thought maybe it would get deleted. So fortunately, I'd already downloaded it. But yeah, so that sort of got me switched on to, well, I'll do Facebook videos. I mean, I'm a bit lazy. I don't want to do research. I don't want to produce dry reports. I don't want to do graphs. I've commissioned some research at the moment. We're looking into the police and the NHS. So I have commissioned some reports, but I'm not going to do them. I'm good. I can switch on a camera and I can talk to it without any script or plan. And so that seems like a much better spend of my time.
Yes, but your brain has not stopped around this idea of centering women. And this is what I wanted to get to as well, is this idea of feminism. You have been promoting this, and I wondered how much really deep thought you had put into this, because when you're challenging something like, I showed you this earlier, when you're challenging something like feminism, which of course has gone through, and I know for longtime feminists like myself that have this push-pull, but never saying, I'm never going to allow them to say that I'm not a feminist or that I won't call myself a feminist. However, I'm very interested in looking into new terminology, I'm open to those kinds of things. I hear you bring up feminist. Could you tell me what is that to you, and what does it say, and what is it saying or not saying about whatever has gone before or exists there in tandem? I mean, feminism is not going to stop existing. Misogyny is not going to stop existing as a mindset either. What is this?
It's about, so I hate the term gender critical. I think that's ridiculous. I think often gender critical just means I don't think men can be women. And so I don't think it's accurate. A lot of people people call me gender critical. I mean, do I look like I'm criticizing so-called gender expression. I don't think I am. And anyway, I don't even like using the word gender. I think it should be put in the bin. I think it's a useless, horrible word that invited all of this crap. And so I don't like the word gender. So I wasn't going to use that. And I didn't feel like a feminist. I didn't feel like feminism was an appropriate label for myself. And it's mainly because it doesn't mean the same thing to most people. And B, everybody just kept telling me I wasn't a good enough feminist. Oh, you can't do that. You're not a feminist. You're not a feminist. And I thought, well, fine, I'm not a feminist. Fine, have it. You can't beat me with that stick because I'm not one. I haven't read enough feminist theory, and some of the things I don't agree with. So I do have a little bit of an issue about motherhood within feminism. I think, and I understand it. I understand in the second wave, women had to be unshackled from the burden and the expectation of having children. And I think absolutely, and probably the whole thing needed to be broken in feminism in order to rebuild something that was more appropriate for women. And I also think that I'm entirely grateful for all the gains that the blood, sweat and tears of feminists throughout history have made. And I don't mean to at all insult anybody who still calls himself a feminist. What I'm all about is I'm all about trying to convey a really clear message to people, because I want everybody to understand exactly what is going on. And if you then say feminist, some people, you lose them right from the off. They're not coming with you. They're not going to listen to a damn word you say. They're not going to talk about it on the building sites. They're not going to have a coffee morning. They're not going to stand at the school gates talking about any of this because you're a feminist, and they can attribute all kinds of nonsense to that terminology now, from man-hating to pro-sex work, to pro-trans. They might be wrong, but that is a use of that word. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to offer women a word that meant, look, it simply means you care about women and girls and you know what they are. That's it. You don't have to read anything. You just have to have the instinct that you know that you want your elderly mother protected in her own home and cared for by only females. Or that if you have some sort of psychotic breakdown and you end up in a chronic mental health unit in our NHS, that there will be female only. That you want your daughter, when she goes to the toilet at school, that she's not going to have a boy in the cubicle next door. That's all you need to be a feminist. That's all you need for feminism. You just need to center females, not completely exclusively. You're allowed to like men and boys, but you have to understand that our journey is completely unique, and it's globally unique. We have a global shared experience on the virtue of our biology. And so that's kind of where it came from. Maybe feminist will be used for 5 years and then feminism will claim its righteous and rightful place back in our consciousness and our language, so that when someone says feminist, they know that it means centering women and girls. But I don't think that is the case right now.
Mm-hmm. We've got you coming to the United States at the point when this interview is going on. You'll be here in barely 3 months from now with the Sovereign Women's Lodge, I believe. Is that what the event is called?
I think so.
April Morrow is pulling together quite an event. What do you hope to bring to it?
Oh, I don't know, a bit of English charm. A kind of a can-do, right? Because I think it's probably very easy for me to say we're in a totally different culture in the United Kingdom. We do have paid for healthcare. We do have a single payer healthcare provider that is free. You don't die of cancer if you're poor. You don't lose your house. And so we do have different systems that are in place that mean that globally, that massive corporate companies, pharmaceutical companies and big surgical hospitals can't put their hands on our kids. We also have a centralized education system. And so we have a centralized curriculum. Basically, you can go to a government department and you can convince them of something, and that will have to be enacted throughout the country. So I know that I'm coming from a very different sort of political system and access to power. However, I think what I would like to bring is just to find the task at hand, know what the task is, and get on with it. And none of this tribal, partisan, terrible, destructive, particularly from women on the left, in fact, only from women on the left, who are so wrapped up in other arguments that they can't let those go in order to define woman. And I do want to say to those women, the right to choose a safe and legal abortion is clearly a human right for women. But if you can't name one, you can't have that right anyway.
Thank you very much. This has been quite revealing. We now know many personal things about your, singing, which of course are going to have to be put to the test at some point, I suppose. Do you do any singing in the shower now? I'm just curious.
I do, yeah. I annoy my kids all the time.
One of the things I've heard you joke about is that you have this, I think, a VHS tape from the 1980s on was it a dating show or something like that?
I did, 1983.
So
I was 18 or 19.
I think it's a great idea for you to raise money for Standing for Women, and that would be that you get that digitized and that it be a paywall put on to Standing for Women, and anybody that wants to see that has to pay about, say 20, what would you say, 20 pounds, 20 quid?
That's quite a good idea.
I think it would be hysterical. And I've enjoyed this so much. I hope it's been good for you.
Been lovely.
Women's Liberation Radio News. You said that you were aware of it, and you're aware of Thistle at this point. Had you heard any of the shows?
Oh, it's so bad, Jerry. I don't have time to. I hate people that say I don't have time, but I genuinely, I just literally don't have time to do anything besides get my orders done. I mean, I even have staff, but yeah, it's crazy. I'm so crazy busy, but yeah, so sorry, no.
But beyond the Sovereign Women, do you have any other plans before 2021 wraps up now? Any particular that you can talk about? Any big projects?
I've got another potential couple of dates in the US. That's coming. I do Speakers Corner, which is it's like a free speech. It's a historic place of free speech in the United Kingdom. The suffragettes had meetings there. So we are starting to do them. There used to be meetings in halls, and there's something really vibrant about being on the street. You're not allowed any amplification. You're only allowed one banner, but it's a place where you attract people who are just walking through the park, and it's really it's lively. It's wonderful. So we are doing that. We are doing a picnic and Speakers Corner meeting. Well, it's not a meeting. You're not allowed to actually have meetings. I just say I'm going there and people can come along if they want. And that's in on the 27th of June. So those are going to be monthly. We're going to build a movement. I often say to people that it's like you link arms and you find someone to protect and you link arms around them, and then you can fit more people in that circle as more people grow strong enough to link arms with you. And eventually all women and girls are protected. Another thing that I'm going to be launching soon is a crowdfunder to fund a privately funded, i.e. no government or council is allowed to tell us that we have, is going to force us to have men. And that's to fund a women's refuge. And that really will be a very symbolic start, for something tangible. I think people need something to do.
Mm-hmm. How did your first Speakers Corner go after like 6 months of you just did that on the 23rd?
It's great. Well, I sell umbrellas with adult, human, female on now, and obviously it's the UK, so it started raining, and so many women in that group had bought umbrellas that it was just all these little pink umbrellas started popping up. Bright pink they are, like that was but I am bringing out black ones because quite a few of my gender non-conforming quite a few of my lesbian friends are like, I'm not having a pink umbrella. So we have got a black one coming out with white writing instead. But yeah, it's just lovely.
And and I've been waiting. Do you have any keychains?
Wow, funny you should say that. And just keychains.
Keychain, the way that Women's Liberation Radio News has a keychain, and it's got kind of that, that lovely, it's silver on black background.
Oh, that's very nice.
So
I've just put in an order today to do a little keychain that's actually a t-shirt with woman, adult, human, female on. But yeah, no, I do have one. I've got, what's the other one? I've got one I've got one made out of enamel. It's not this, but I don't think I've got one here. I've got one made out of enamel, a little, but it's bigger. It's sort of like that. So okay. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, Kellie-Jay, anything else that you'd like to say? Because it sounds like we've covered an awful lot of territory. And
I think we've covered loads. No, I think, I feel, I guess I feel in the UK because certainly in England, because we have managed to stop some of the things that other countries have not, for whatever reason, whether we were just forewarned because we could see what was happening in the United States, whether it's because we're quite small, maybe because of how our political parties and things are set up. But I really feel that the English women have an absolute duty to overturn some of the things that have happened, so that other countries have like a blueprint of how it can be done. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in any way to be patronizing that other people can't do it, but I think that politicians in particular need to see how it's happened in other countries to understand that actually what's happening in America is not normal. It's mm-hmm. not truthful. It's based on a man's fantasy of what he would like a country to look like and how much he hates women. And so I do think I think British women really do have a duty to make sure we win this, absolutely, because then other countries and other women have a fighting chance.
Maybe we never should have had the Boston Tea Party and kick the Brits out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn the recording off and hang on.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to Women's Liberation Radio News. WLRN really looks for subscriptions and donations and whatever. We need listeners. And if there's something that I really got out of talking with Kellie-Jay was, we know she has a YouTube channel she's got over 33,000 subscribers or something. But she said that her subscribers have sort of stayed at a certain place. And that even somebody like that's that popular, this is why it's so important that this original TERF radio of WLRN gets that love. So remember to subscribe, share, like, do it all. And WLRN has these fabulous little things. You can see it's like the poster. And they've also got these really cool glasses. Ever since I got sent one, thank you, Thistle, I've been using this a lot. So again, let's give the love where you can. When you can donate, it's great. But listening and passing on the word is really huge. So you can do it for Kellie-Jay, do it for WLRN. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks.